Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new season with SIMRACERS Revival. We are here at Kyalami today in South Africa for the first round of what is the Formula 1 1967 Championship. Now we're back with a 10-race season, jam-packed with these 1967 cars. I'm really looking forward to seeing how all of our drivers cope with some of these classic cars, which can bite quite significantly around these classic tracks, and we've got a jam-packed season ahead. So if we check the schedule, a long old schedule taking us all the way to the 21st of December. So we're starting at Kyalami in South Africa, and then in a couple of weeks' time we'll be heading to the streets of Monaco. All of these courses have been chosen to fit with the 1960s theme. So the Monaco Grand Prix will be the 1960s version with that really fast chicane. Hopefully no one's going to be jumping in the harbour this time. Then for round 3 we head to the Dutch Grand Prix of Zandvoort on the 14th of September. For round 4 we will be at Spa-Francorchamps on the 28th of September. Then round 5 we head to France for Rouen, 12th of October. That should be good fun. And round 6, the fast sweeping turns on the airfield, or supposed airfield back then, and continues to be of Silverstone on the 26th of October. That's round 6. Round 7, heading off to Germany for the very challenging Nordschleife configuration of the Nürburgring, and that will be the 9th of November. Then the 23rd of November, the 67 version of Monza. Round 8. Round 9, Watkins Glen, so heading off to America for what would be the United States Grand Prix, 7th of December. And then the last round, we round out in Mexico, as we normally do in the 67 season. Round 10 on the 21st of December, the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit. I did take a little bit of a deep dive on that circuit myself. It's very interesting where it's now situated and where the course now goes to where it previously did. So these courses are very classic. We do have gravel traps, we do have quite high curbs, but long sweeping turns with these cars, and it's a certain style. You've got to employ some four-wheel drift around these circuits. So having a look at the cars we've got available to us on this this time around, we are running a number of chassis that were available to us in 67. So we're using the Brabham, the BRM, the Cooper, the Eagle, the Ferrari, the Honda, a very rare machine manufactured by LDS, and we have Lotus Matra, and lastly the McLaren. So some very classic 1967 cars, which I'm sure will become familiar with throughout the broadcast if you don't know about the 1967 season. So drivers such as Jim Clark, Graham Hill, Jack Brabham, Danny Hulme, Lorenzo Bandini, and Jackie Stewart, classic drivers, legends I would call them. So our drivers are going to be going around the sweeping turns in Kyalami, 75 laps of this circuit. So it is currently we've got an air temperature of about 22 degrees Celsius. It's quite a high track temperature. We've got a few drivers out on circuit at the moment. 45 degrees track temperature is quite high, but the tyres these guys will be using, they don't wear an awful lot. But we're not really expecting too many pit stops in this race. I'd imagine that a lot of our drivers are going to try and see if they can get to the end, but they may need a splash. But we'll see how that goes. So the winding turns of South Africa, a little bit of elevation change, but we'll get to more of a description of the circuit in a moment's time. But I am your host, Neil Wood, and I will be taking you through these 10 rounds of the F1 1967 series. It's a little bit of a change from the 1984 series that we did before. These are I wouldn't say as fast. We don't have any downforce. This is the last year before they started experimenting with aerodynamics, so no wings on these cars in 1967. 1968 is when they decided to maybe try and put some wings on, and then things got really dramatic. But this is the last year that they weren't using wings on their cars, and what we'll notice is that these 67 cars were used in the game Grand Prix Legends, if you are familiar with that, and that was actually kind of brought me into finding out a lot more about what happened in the 60s, 70s and 80s. I'm a bit of a 90s child for Formula 1, but looking back at the history of it, very interesting history and very lauded history for Formula 1 and Grand Prix racing. Sometimes prefer some of these classic tracks, but our drivers are out on track at the moment doing some of their practice laps, so why don't we actually join them and we can see what's progressing. So as in last season's racing, I am using an automatic camera system, so the game is going to be choosing the action for me, which leaves me brain power to be able to call some of the action elsewhere on the track. So a couple of familiar drivers that we had last season, and they are with us going back in time to the 1960s. Hopefully the volume of the cars isn't too overpowering. But if you were here last season for the 1984 series, you'll notice some very familiar names. So Josef Müller currently in the Cooper, heading through the final turn. A long sweeping turn. We go over the hill, the blind crest. Matthias Bogle currently sits in the pits in what looks like the Graham Hill Lotus car. But we do currently have 11 drivers on the server at the moment. I'm sure that will change. 60s cars are quite an acquired taste, I would imagine, for a lot of sim racers. They do take a little bit of a different driving style, but Bogle is on top with the 115.239. That is practice time, so I'd imagine a few people are maybe trying out a little bit with a low fuel run. We do have a 25-minute qualification session, so quite a long time to be able to get some laps in and get a good grid spot. The grid is quite unique here, that it actually starts on a bit of an uphill run, and drivers would have to be careful about rolling backwards depending on where they qualify on the grid. But Bogle currently leads provisionally from Joe Reebok. And we have Carlos Calderon in third. All the three drivers in the 115s. Josef Müller just popped himself up to fourth place. 1 second adrift from the rest of the field, but it might mean that some drivers are in what would be supposed like slower cars or slower straight line speed cars. Lotus and the Eagle and the Honda are considered probably the cars with the most powerful engines, and the Cooper is lacking probably in a little bit of straight line speed, but possibly has better handling. As Josef Müller comes round towards what is one of the slowest corners of the track. I believe that's Clubhouse Bend. Come up this short straight here down towards the S's. Try not to take any curb down the hill here. So you see that curve is quite high and it can actually put you off. But this turn of the S's is quite deceptive. You get on the throttles earlier than you think, and then we go to Lee Kuop Bend. Is that how you pronounce it? I've never actually had to pronounce that. It's a very strange word, but they're heading towards one of the fastest turns on the circuit, the Kink. It has a very fast pit entry. You can see pit entry just flashing past our screen there. So if someone's heading to pit lane, they would have to signal quite early, pulling to the right hand side. So drivers are going to have to be very careful of that. So Carlos Calderon in the very, very sleek Ferrari number 99. Very nice engine sound for the Ferrari. It's personally one of my favourites that I always used to run in a Grand Prix Legends game way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So Carlos Calderon coming through the S's and up towards one of the final turns. So will this Lotus provide the speed that Matthias Bogle needs for this? Pretty much most of the corners on this track are maybe down a gear and a slight lift. I've had a little bit of practice myself. I was lagging behind in lap time, but it's all good fun. You have to get the lines exactly right. A little bit of slip works in your favour. You don't really want any understeer, but then again, you don't really want it too loose either. I'm not sure what these cars are going to handle like after 75 laps worth of racing. So if we step down the grid, and we can see some of the other drivers who've got with us today. So Andy Schremser, actually the creator of this mod, this 1967 mod. So thank you to Andy for producing it. He is in the Matra, a nice blue French car. That's a car that didn't actually feature in Grand Prix Legends. It was only the main, I think, the main 6 or 7 manufacturers, and even then they didn't have the license for the Honda and the Cooper. But the Matra has been created for us. So looking down the list, who else have we got? So we've looked at Josef Müller. Ralf Becker is also with us today, currently in the Lotus. So number 13. Warming his brakes up just before he comes out of pit. So drivers have to come out from the back of the pits and then head down the front of pit lane. There isn't a pit speed limit either, so drivers have to be very wary of that. Then we have Dale Borveg in the Ferrari. Now I assume that most of our drivers are going to be sticking with these cars throughout this season. It's going to be a very long season, starting in August, heads all the way to December. But we've got most of our cars and tracks confirmed. I don't think they're going to add any more manufacturers. It is set for us for this season, so we're set with this many cars. But the tracks, there's still a couple to be confirmed of what versions we're using, but they are going to be the 1960s versions of these tracks. We want to keep in period if possible. So we just rolled over to qualifying. We're going to have 25 minutes of qualifying, and we'll have to see what our drivers can do. So now it's low fuel. And I believe we do have the rule that you have to do your out lap, you have to do your fast lap and come into the pits. So no stopping out on circuit in qualifying. That would be a bit of a no-no with the steward. So out on track first of all is Matthias Bogle. First one out the pits, wants a clear track ahead of him. I imagine some of the perhaps slower cars would want perhaps a tow. You want to be in close proximity to another driver to grab yourself a little bit of a cheeky tow. So let's check some of these sector times as Bogle heads through Sunset Bend up towards Clubhouse Bend. As I say, this is one of the slowest corners on the circuit. You notice that some of these corners are a little bit off camber as well, which can be extra challenging. But as I say, you don't really want to be running over any of these curves like they do nowadays. They are pretty much a guide for the edge of the track. So if you're used to hopping over curbs and things, you're going to have to get out of that mentality as we come out of the final bend. Let's see if we can see the top speed of this Lotus. So coming down the straight. Over the blind crest. So going up to 280 kilometers an hour. Fifth gear. So just before he brakes, that's 290 kilometers an hour. Just before he brakes hard. Circuit drops away from you down here. And again, you can run onto the curb a little, but it does make the car a little squirrely as it comes back onto the tarmac. But fast bends here, 4th gear turn. He's going to possibly go down 1 gear for this right-hander for Sunset Bend. He does indeed. So 3rd gear. Then he's got to pick his braking point for Clubhouse Bend here. He's going to go down to possibly 2nd, even 1st for some drivers. Runs a little bit wide, but he can go on to this concrete on the outside. Probably a little slippy, but the track just drops away from you in the S's, so you've got to be very careful of how fast you take the entry to the S's. Getting close to the braking markers at the edge there, and he's coming up against a little bit of traffic at the end of the lap. And that corner at the end is a little bit deceptive, but he will be the first driver to set a lap time as he comes across the kink and over the blind crest. And that's a 1:15.20 for Bogle. As we switch to Becker, who's just about to complete his lap time as well. Personal best all across the board. Schremser currently on his lap as well, so Becker puts a lap time in 1.6 seconds behind pole sitter. So 2 Lotuses on the front row provisionally at the moment. As Bogle is going ever faster now, but he does have traffic. He has 10th place in front of him at the moment. That is Schuerkamp in, I believe that's the Brabham, and it's very easily done, putting a wheel on the dirt. Hopefully he can get that car back to the pits. So a slight mistake from our provisional pole man. Now lap times will build as well. We're not guaranteed the fastest lap times are going to come at the start of the session. A lot of the drivers are going to be putting rubber down on this circuit and possibly going out on a heavier fuel load and just winding down the laps, getting in the rhythm. You want to be able to get the rhythm of this track. It is very flowing, as I said. So pulls to the inside and pulls into the pits. 3rd is Thomas Rosa. Here's Becker coming across the line. He's going to go for another lap. Personal best in the 1st and the 2nd. That's a 1:16.5. So we did see our top 3 down in the 1:15s, and Bogle did put a representative time in straight away. Quick pit stop and out we come again. So let's have a look at some of our other drivers. So Grimlowski, we didn't see him, Grimlowski, in the 1984 championship. I'm going to mandate that the computer does follow this car. It can overrule me, so if I switch to a car and it switches away straight away, that's the computer saying no, you can't do that. But I'm going to look at Krzysztof Grimlowski in the Honda. So I believe this is the RA300. You'll notice a lot of these cars have a very unique exhaust layout at the back of the car. I think the Ferrari is the most intricate, but the Honda is quite close behind. Slight lock up and running a bit wide. It is very wide in turn 1, so it does save you a little. So back to Schremser. Now Schremser has popped up onto the first row of the grid. 1:15.2 is his target. He's still in the 1:16s, but I'm sure those lap times will be coming down. There's a couple of people out on the circuit at the moment that are very, very close together. So we've got Schuerkamp in the Brabham trying to put in a fast lap time. Slightly wide of apex there. You can see that the Brabham seems slightly dwarfed by the car behind. So I believe that car behind is Joe Reebok in the McLaren. So you notice that the McLaren has got quite a wider wheelbase. And you see on the side of Schuerkamp's car it says Hoover. So Schuerkamp nicknamed Hoover. I think he might have changed down a bit early there and locked the rears. So he cut away just before. So there might be a yellow flag down in this S's. Or no. It did clear. What happened to Bogle there? That was supposed to be a flat-out turn. Suddenly seemed like something pulled on the handbrake there, so that was unfortunate. but still at the top of the timesheets. Andy Schremser has improved a little. He's now on 1:16.2. So the times are coming down, but that provisional pole set straight away by Bogle. I wonder if that's gonna stand. Probably stand until the end of the session. I did see a yellow flag out there in Sector 1 there, but it looks like it has cleared. Let's take a look at one of our smaller cars in the field. Josef Müller in the Cooper. Very unique looking car as far as I'm concerned. Quite a small chassis, kind of comparable to what the Brabham is. But the Lotus 49, kind of infamous in the 1967 series, or season rather, driven by Jim Clark and Graham Hill. I believe the Lotus started out not in the 49 in 67, they started out in the 43. But Colin Chapman was able to get the 49 out, and it pretty much dominated some of the races. It's stupendously fast, particularly in Jim Clark's hands, but a little bit fragile. I have been keeping tabs on some of the practice sessions for these guys in this series, and we have had a few people blowing up a few engines. You really have to be careful staying away from the red line. A misplaced gear shift, or because you have to lift on upshift, you have to blip on downshift. So Josef Müller now goes to the front of the field. So the times are tumbling down. He's only 0.4 away from provisional pole, and that is in a Cooper. So Lotus with Bogle in first, Müller in a Cooper in second, and Schremser in the Matra in third. Very stylish way to get around one of the fastest corners on the track. I'm not sure that is the fastest way. It tries to get out of the way of his competitors behind. So lucky that wasn't in front of anybody. So Bogle is not happy with his provisional pole. He's probably feeling a little bit of pressure because you can see his margin for provisional pole is coming down. So he wants to push on. But 1:15.2 is pretty fast compared to what they were doing in practice. So let's see if we can pick up any other drivers. So there's a driver I haven't looked at yet, which is Andy D. So Andy D in the Alpes Eagle. It's a very fetching looking Eagle Westlake. Now, I did mention in chat before these guys started racing, I was a little bit disappointed that no one has decided to take the BRM. The BRM is a nice sounding car, but no one has decided to take it. Now, looking back at the 67 season, if you don't know, the 67 season, it was won by, I believe, Jack Brabham. In the Brabham. Who'd have thought it? But when you look down the list in Wikipedia, there is a number of manufacturers and privateers and things like that. But you've got the main manufacturers, the main big hitters like Lotus, Ferrari, Cooper, Honda, Eagle. So back in 67, Jack Brabham did take pole position in the race. Denny Hulme, his teammate, took fastest lap, but the winning driver was actually Pedro Rodriguez. All the way back in, I believe it was January. 2nd of January, so it must have been mighty cold, or at least a little bit chilly. But we were in South Africa, so maybe not. So Schremser not really setting the timesheets alight. So that lap he did earlier was good for second. He's now down in 6th. So we are seeing another driver that's popped up. So this is the McLaren of Joe Reebok. And we have Aitor Laboa in 3rd in the Ferrari. So if you look at the back of this Ferrari, look at the intricate exhaust pipes. Slight lock up coming into Clubhouse Bend. So look at the lovely exhaust pipes. So that engine's not sounding very great to me. I don't know if that's a problem. It doesn't sound very good, but that might just be a glitch on my end. But yeah, possibly because he's not pulling into the pit. So just over 12 minutes to go from qualifying. Bogle still has provisional pole. He continues on his outlap, but Reebok is now only 0.1 away. So this is possibly why Bogle is pushing on, because the rest of the field are just getting faster and faster. Bogle was able to put his first lap time in at the top of the timesheets, but everyone is catching up. So Reebok in the McLaren in 2nd, Laboa in the Ferrari in 3rd. Then we have Calderon, as Reebok gets it a little bit wide coming out of this Clubhouse Bend, heading down towards the S's. I don't think anyone is close to him. No, he's not. 3rd place of Laboa. That's 2nd place just going by. No, he is 2nd place. What am I talking about? So there's no one behind for a little while. He's possibly going to head to the pits, because that was a pretty heavy hit. I can see that's the Eagle of Andy D ahead of us. So a bit of a queue to come into pit lane as well. So Bogle trying to push it on. So the top 3 is separated by 0.3 of a second. Joe Reebok has headed to the pits. Bogle is so close to his personal best in the first sector. Down the hill. Oh, he had to avoid a stricken Honda in the middle of the track there. He was lucky to avoid that. He possibly didn't see it until the last moment, because you come across the what is a bit of a blind crest and kind of dip down into the centre of the S's, kind of a bit like the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. I think that was called, well, I saw a yellow flag for Calderon just after the first sector at Juxski Sweep. Juxski Sweep? That's very hard to pronounce. But Laboa currently in 3rd. He's not slightly down on his personal best, but we've got 10 minutes exactly left of this session. So that car seems very loose coming through the faster parts of the circuit, but he is 300ths up on the fastest first sector of the lap. There is a yellow flag in sector 2, but I think that has quickly cleared. Possibly just someone going off the track a little. So he does have 9th place of Bolveg in front of him, so hopefully it's going to cross the 2nd sector. Does run a little bit wide, but he's still purple by about 0.2 of a second, nearly 0.3 of a second up on. So this may push provisional pole out of reach, but again we have 9 minutes to go, so plenty of time, and a little bit of a cheeky toe by Bolveg in the Ferrari in front. So the first time someone's gone down to the 114s, that's a hell of a time. 114.844. So that's nearly half a second in front of the rest of the field. Maybe that is what I heard. We did hear Laboa. His engine was a little, sounded a little rough. Maybe it wasn't my ears that deceived me, because he's had to pull to the pits, and it's kind of well timed, really, that his engine failed right before pit entry. Looks like he's actually stricken in pit entry there. I'm not sure he can get to the pits. If he can't get to the pits, that might be qualification over with. So that means he will have to wait for the rest of the field to do their laps. He's currently, well, I wouldn't say safe in third. There's Calderon and Muller just behind, only about a tenth or two. So Bogle heads to the pits. There's Thomas Rosa hanging out the back end of that Eagle. So in the customary works livery that I believe was driven by Dan Gurney. So the dark blue of the Eagle Westlake. So Joe Reebok, after putting in that time to getting up to second place, he has done a personal best in the first sector here. Not troubling the curbs at all, not running wide. Keeps it off the Armco. Slightly down in the second sector. There's a yellow in sector 2. I think there's possibly a stopped car after turn 2, but that has cleared. So I think Grimlowski came to a halt in turn 2, just outside turn 2. Joe Reebok slightly down in the second sector. Just looking at the timesheets to see if he improved. I don't think he improved his time, unfortunately. So Schremser coming across the line. Currently 6th place. Who is he following? He's actually following 5th place of Muller just in front. This will be a bit too far away for a tow. So Calderon in the Ferrari now has an opportunity to get to leapfrog 3rd place. Technically his teammate in the Ferrari in the Boa that we saw blowing up or nearly blowing up, just coming up to pit entry, but Joe Reebok continues personal best in the first sector like he did last time. Let's see if he can improve, but Rosa coming around the final corner. Might be a bit distant for a tow of that Ferrari there, but the Westlake is quite quick. But again, we pick him, possibly had a spin because he's really down on the second sector there. A spin for Reebok, pushing a little bit too hard. He was 3/10 up on his personal best. And also another thing is that if you spin, you don't really want to start revving that engine because you will shorten the life of it. Drivers are going to have to be very, I was going to say, sympathetic mechanically to some of these cars. It is just a case of surviving some of the 75 laps. So looking at the point system that we do have for this series, it is 20 for first, 16 for second, 14 for third, and then we have 12, 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. So all 12 drivers will score points. It is unfortunate looking at that point system. We do have 13 drivers today, so one driver is going to miss out on some points. Seeing that Oliver Day came to a little bit of grief just before Clubhouse or Sunset Bend. Clubhouse Bend, I mean. No, this is Sunset Bend. So in the Matra, same as Andy Schremser, but Bogle, I think, has possibly pushed the provisional pole out of reach. Not seeing too much change in the leaderboard, although Calderon has now popped up onto the first row. 9th place of Becker has come to grief somewhere on the circuit. He is stopped. He's trying to get himself back and going. So it's a pretty awkward place to be, pinned between the Armco and the racing line there. Didn't really want to push out onto the circuit until we knew for definite that it was clear. So 3.5 minutes to go. So Calderon now on the front row, 3.5 tenths away from pole. So it's good effort for the 99 car, the 99 Ferrari. Sixth place of Schremser may have come to grief, and that is his qualification over. Stopped out on the circuit. That's unfortunate for him. As I just see that Rosa has improved in 7th place, so he's possibly not safe. Calderon coming into the pits quite quickly there. So Bogle on an outlap, pushed a bit further on. And a flag in sector 1. I'm not sure if that is still the case, but we carry on. So Josef Müller currently in 4th place, 0.6 away. Joe Reebok knocked down to 3rd. With that little spin, he has regrouped. So 7th place. Rosa has gone around, stopped out on circuit, so Rosa's qualification may be done. So possibly our drivers pushing a bit beyond the limits, I would say. But Bogle pushing on. So we got about 7 cars out on circuit at the moment. So maybe our drivers doing a couple of laps, pulling into the pits, trying something different with setup. Going out again, but 1.5 minutes to go. So Bogle is going to make it round for another go. I don't know if he's going to be the last across the line. But he is up. He's 1/10 up on his personal best. Just pushing a bit trying to carry too much speed out of the final corner. And he only had 1/10 in hand, so I think that lap is ruined. Will he go for another one? Reebok getting a bit loose. Coming through Sunset Bend. So that personal best he did in the first sector has unfortunately been undone. 9th place of Borveg is stationary in turn 1. I think he's got going again. So Calderon, 2nd place. Can he get any closer to Bogle? Go through Sunset Bend. Bogle just behind. So this is possibly going to be their final laps. I don't think anyone's going to cross the line to do another one. So 5/100ths of a second down on his personal best. Slightly wide on the exit there, pulling the left side wheels up on the curb. He'd need to be able to get on to the throttle as early as possible. Now, when I drove this track before, I like to get a tight line out the final corner and try and get the car straightened up as quick as possible. Even though he did have a purple sector in sector 2, he's decided that he's going to call it a day. But 1.5 tenths away, Calderon is possibly the only one that can improve. Did he get another lap in? 9th place of Borveg has come to a stop. Grimlowski's going to come across the line. I think this might be heading to the pits. I believe it is. So 8th place of Becker. Doesn't look like he's setting the timesheets alight there. Did an extra lap just to be sure. I think Borveg is just getting out the gravel here. As 2nd place goes through of Calderon. That's very slow. It's not even an attempt at going any further. So very interesting qualification session. I thought maybe there would be more of a challenge for Bogle, but that time at the top of the session seemed to be setting the pace, and the rest of the field was basically chasing for the rest of the session. So we're going to set the starting order grid. And that is our qualification done for the time being. Alright, so let's see what we've got for our final grid for the first race of this season. So the starting order is as follows. So Bogle gets first on the grid with Carlos Calderon in second in the Ferrari, Joe Reebok third in McLaren, Josef Müller in the Cooper in fourth. Then we have Laboa in the Ferrari in fifth, Schremser is the first marcher on the grid in sixth, Rosa in the Eagle in seventh with Ralf Becker in eighth. Then we have Borweg in the Ferrari in ninth, the Honda of Gumilowski in 10th with Schuerkamp in the Brabham in 11th with Andy D in 12th in the Eagle. And we do have a BRM on the grid. The curse of last season with 1984, I really struggled with Marco's name. Sal Vallagio. I believe I've got it right this time. I spent all of last season trying to pronounce his name, but Sal Vallagio is our last entrant. I didn't actually see him out on circuit, so I managed to get in just before we've got to qualification, or warm-up rather. So our driver's going to head out on warm-up. So just a reminder of the schedule we have this season. So we're heading from August all the way to December, starting off at Kyalami in South Africa today, and a race every 2 weeks. So heading to places like Monaco, Monte Carlo, streets of Monte Carlo, then Zandvoort in the Netherlands, then to Belgium for Spa-Francorchamps, France for the Rouen circuit, and then we head to the UK for Silverstone, over to Germany for the Nordschleife, then to Italy for Monza, over to America for Watkins Glen, and our final round at Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico. So that should round us out all the way up to Christmas on the 21st of December. So looking forward to taking you through all of these races this season. It should be good fun. So this is a little bit different from what we did last time with the 1984 season. We're running cars with no wings whatsoever. Back in the day, or back in the year just before aerodynamics was a big thing. So 1968 was when they started putting wings on the back of the car. So it's a kind of a pivotal year, really. It's when things really ramped up with aerodynamics through the late 60s and the early 70s. And you see modern days is very different to what we have now. Or what we have in front of us, rather. So let's have a look at what our drivers are doing out on the circuit as we prepare for what will be a very interesting 75 laps. So it's going to be a long old race for our drivers. A long old race. So let's see if we can get a look at the BRM. We didn't see the BRM out in qualifying. So this is the Jackie Stewart BRM, and I'm going to mandate that the computer actually look at the BRM. So very distinct with the red nose, so you definitely know that a BRM is behind you. So final practice laps for Laboa as well. So as I say, this may be a race of attrition. Don't over rev it on the grid. Watch those temperatures. Watch those downshifts and upshifts. So drivers have got to be very careful with their upshifts. Lifting on upshift, no flat shifting in this series. And also when you downshift, don't blip it too hard either. That will be the kiss of death. So we're winding down the minutes of warm-up. So it will be I believe it might be a formation start. So last time with the 1984, our drivers went away from the grid, did a lap to warm up the tyres and brakes, and formed up on the grid. So it may be the same with this, but as I said, this circuit does, or the grid does start on a hill, so drivers are going to have to be very careful with possibly holding the brake just before they go away from the line. So if we see some cars rolling, there may be some penalties being handed out for jump starts and such. So just grabbing a little bit of a drink before we start, because it's going to be a long old Grand Prix. The South African Grand Prix, if you will. So I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Doing a little bit of preparation in the background. And when we finished the 1984 season, SimRacers Revival, I thought they might be heading back to the 70s, but they decided to take on the 1967 season instead. We do have a couple of absences today. We were expecting a few more drivers, and the heat in Europe and the UK is still too much. So it's actually 45 laps. I was told it was 75, but 45 is not too bad either. I'm going to double check the regulations myself. It is indeed 45 laps. It's me that's got that wrong. So 45 laps, so it's not as long as I thought. So we will be in for at least an hour. At least an hour's race. So my apologies that I got that wrong. In the real thing, they did 80 laps around South Africa, Kyalami circuit. A circuit that's been around since, if I look up the circuit layout, 1961. And it ran this layout until 1988, if you can believe that. Obviously, safety had changed an awful lot. Unfortunately, this circuit was kind of infamous for a couple of fatal accidents that happened during the 1970s, but it's a very unique circuit with just how it flows. The modern circuit does use a portion of this circuit, but not an awful lot of it. So if you've run the modern version of Kyalami, you will notice that there is a couple of bends that look very, very similar. I did run this circuit a couple of times when they stopped way back. I can't remember when they actually ran it to. It's possibly mid 70s, I think 80s they stopped, because I remember there was a dramatic championship decider in the 80s, but they came back in I believe it was 92 and 93 to the modern layout of the circuit, which if you've ever seen the 90s version of the circuit, it feels very unique because there are red and white curbs pretty much all the way around either side of the tarmac, which I think is quite unique looking, but very odd when you take a brief look. So we are using the original layout that was around in 1961 to 1988. So, as I say, Crowthorne Corner is turn 1, named after the Crowthorne Hotel, which is located nearby that section of circuit, and then turn 2, we go downhill towards Barbecue Bend, named after the tradition of South African barbecues, apparently. It's not much, it's not really too deep. And then you've got Jet-Ski Sweep, so very fast left-hander, pretty much flat out in these cars when the tyres are warmed up. Then fourth turn will be Sunset Bend, Clubhouse Bend, down to the S's 1 and 2, then Lookshot Bend, turn 8, and then the last fast corner will be the Kink. So 45 laps in Kyalami today. What will happen? Lotus on the front wheel of Bogle Calderon in second as they go away from the line. Slight shuffle further back. Looks like the front row has got away very, very cleanly. I'm not seeing any incidents either, so everyone has got away from the line, which is good to see. Lotus out front, Calderon second, Muller third. That's the Eagle of Rosa in third as we go on board. Well, I believe that is Becker. Taking it very easy through these first few laps when you're in close proximity to some of the other drivers. You don't want to push it too much when you know you've got a big number of laps ahead. Someone kicking up the dust there, but no harm done. So Calderon is not letting Bogle get away on this first lap. Nice cheeky little toe from that very quick Lotus. Joe Reebok pushed down to 7th place, so maybe a not quite getting that clutch bite point. Runs a little bit wide, got to stay away from that Armco. Becker having a cheeky look up the inside of Reebok as they go onto the main straight. It looks like Grimlowski has run into trouble because he's out the back in the Honda. So first lap done. Down the hill. Bogle looked like he wanted to go a little bit defensive there. Calderon nearly misses his braking point. BRM of Salvalaggio is now up to 11th place. Making big progress. It wasn't able to get here in time to put in a qualification lap. But Calderon pushing on in second. These drivers are possibly going to need to pace themselves a little. They don't want to overdo the exuberance, particularly when they've got engine life to take care of. So Schuerkamp in 9th, currently following the Lotus of Becker. Down here we go through the S's. So Laboa in 5th. Following Rosa in the Eagle. So you want to get a good exit out of here. It's very difficult to get the power down. You've got to get the car as straight as possible. You don't want to open the throttle up when you're still steering. So right under the rear wings between first and second. Fastest lap time of 1:16.8. So Ferrari already going for a move up to turn 1. Locks up slightly, but he was already ahead just before. Runs a little bit wide on the exit. I think Bogle perhaps knows that he's got some pace in hand, and similarly a Ferrari is past an Eagle further back. So Rosa was passed by Laboa. We did see the start of that move just before we saw the battle for the lead. But I'm seeing that Cooper in the background is not letting the top 3 get away, so there's some groups forming on the track. So 1, 2 and 3 are possibly getting away from the rest of the field. And then you have the battle between Laboa and Rosa. And then you have another battle with another Ferrari and a Brabham. So Brabham out front of Bolveg here. That's the Brabham of Schuerkamp. Schremser in 7th. Tucked under the... I was going to say tucked under the rear wing. It's not a rear wing at all, is it? Chucked under the exhaust pipe of the McLaren. So now that Calderon is out front, fastest lap time 1:16.1, fastest lap of the race so far. Joe Reebok felt the need to go defensive there, or at least try and break the toe. So maybe feeling like that Matra behind him that we're currently on board with has a bit more horsepower. Or possibly felt that he got a bad exit out the final corner and had to defend. Sometimes I sometimes like to weave to the inside just so that I can see who's behind me, because if someone's directly behind you, they're in your blind spot basically. So you weave to the inside just to check who's in your mirror. With 4 laps gone, Calderon leads. Bogle pole position. Now down to second. Müller currently holding third. Dropping back a little from this group, but this battle between the Ferrari and the Brabham, I think Schumacher has gone down a place here. Now he's down to 10th place. A little bit of a struggle slowing that car down. But Reebok has been able to catch up to the back of Rosa ahead, or at least I think Rosa was dropped back from the Ferrari ahead. Nice bit of toe for Reebok down the main straight. Schumacher fancies a look up the inside. Borweg in front. Not quite. Ralph Becker now following Schremser in the Matra. Looks like he's able to carry a bit more speed. Joe Reebok seems to be in this little bit of a slight bit of wideness for Rosa, which gives Joe Reebok a very easy look up the inside and overtake into Clubhouse Bend. So I wonder whether Rosa will respond straight away, but the battle between them two has brought Schremser back into play. So this two-way battle. Now this Matra fancies a little bit of a go. So two differing lines there. The Matra of Schremser has decided to take a wider line on the exit. Fastest lap time is coming down again, so pushing on out front. 1:15.9 for Calderon in the Ferrari. So look at the slipstream effect of the Matra. I wonder if he's going to have a go on the brakes. Not quite close enough. If he'd perhaps got a better exit out of the last corner, he would have been able to make that stick, but not currently. But the lead is now up to 3 seconds. Bogle was now dropped back a little, maybe saving a little bit for later. As I say, it's a total of 45 laps that our drivers have to do today. As that is that a spin for Reebok. That's the McLaren, who's now dropping down the field. So it looks like he's able to get going again. So possibly just a loss of concentration there. So all that hard work undone. Now down to 10th place. So very close between Rosa and Schremser. As I say, two different lines there. Did Rosa actually miss a gear there? Or perhaps he's pushing on a bit too much. We did see that a couple of guys were overheating their engine through qualification. So I wonder whether Rosa didn't want to push on too much. That's Becker just behind. Was brought into this battle. But Bogle has now fallen back into the hands of the Cooper of Josef Müller. So from the timing, that's very close between the Lotus of Becker and Rosa there. Brilliant trust between these drivers to go too wide around this circuit, and you can go too wide around this circuit. It's a very unique in that respect. The last thing you want to do is actually tangle with each other's tyres, though. That would be a bad thing. But a good battle between these two. Eagle versus Lotus. So Rosa versus Becker. So you see that slightly wide on the exit. But the Cooper of Müller is able to keep up with this Lotus. Let's check lap times of what Bogle and Müller are doing. They're in the 1:17s. So I wonder whether Bogle is possibly saving a little so that he can push a bit more at the end of the race. Bolveg being chased by Schumacher in the Brabham here. Or should we say the championship winning Brabham. Running the 67 on the side. Josef Müller pushing on in this Cooper, number 21. Not letting that Lotus out of his sight. So So another driver that has dropped away, unfortunately, is Andy D in 12th. So possibly had a half spin. So he's dropped back from the rest of the field. But a long way to go for these drivers. Only 8 laps gone so far. This Grand Prix normally does go by quite quickly. Now, who is that Ferrari out front? That number 20. That's possibly Laboa, I think. So second and third and 6th and 7th are really close together. So battles all the way down the field. You can see some groupings. You can also see when these drivers start battling, it slows each other down and brings other people into play. So Bolveg takes a differing line into turn 1, heading straight for that apex. And then we have Becker and Rosa. Now you can normally go flat out of this turn. When the tyres are warmed up, you can go flat out through this turn. You've got to be very careful with rear slip. If you get any kind of rear slip, you've got to try and counteract it. And down a gear into the right hand of a Sunset Bend, up to the slowest corner on the circuit of Clubhouse Bend. And stay as tight as possible. It's a slight hump over the inside. It's a Brabham running slightly wide of Schuurkamp. That gives Joe Reebok the chance to come through into 9th place. So the McLaren making up 1 spot from that slight spin earlier. But Ralph Becker locking up coming into the last corner. Rose is able to keep it really tight. So slower exit for Becker, possibly onto the straight. And this Eagle is possibly going to have a go down to turn 1. We're already 10 laps into this race. So the Cooper is now right under the exhaust pipe. Now, I did say that this Eagle was going to have a go. Rosa does have a go up to turn 1. Becker gives him plenty of room and tries to fight back on the exit. It's going to be tight through turn 2. Side by side. It's a very, very quick corner to do that. But Rosa will be on the inside for turn 3 as they go up to Sunset Bend, the right-hander. So that was very good trust between these drivers. Good awareness. Very good awareness. But obviously that side-by-side action does bring that McLaren of Reebok and Bolveg into play here. Oh, and Schuurkamp I can see in the background. So a big train of cars forming, but it's not like anyone is slowing. Not like the Chuli train of the early 2000s. So this is possibly the first look for the Cooper. So Muller is showing himself in the mirrors of Bogle. Again, still in the 117s, but Josef Muller is now down to the 116s. So side by side again. So this happened last time. So Becker, as I did say before, he didn't want to get your wheels tangled. So slight understeer for Becker coming through turn 2. Nearly got the wheels tangled between Rosa and Becker. That was very, very close. Collision system working out between those two drivers. I kind of held my breath when that little blip happened, and it looks like they are side by side again. But Rosa's able to keep it around the outside of Clubhouse Bend, but Joe Reebok is now very, very close behind. So Grimlowski now pits from 13th place. I wonder if this is on schedule or possibly coming in to retire. There'll be plenty of time in the season. The Cooper has got major slipstream coming down the straight. This is the first time we've actually seen a proper move. So good move from Josef Muller. I was wondering if he was going to run wide, but keeps it tight to the apex. Bogle running over the curb on the inside. He has been showing a bit of pace, and side by side again, Becker and Rosa are having a fabulous battle. I mean, if I was a Reebok behind, I would be licking my chops. I think I just cursed him there as he goes around, so gets slightly too much wheel spin out of turn. I think that was either turn 1 or turn 2. Turn 1, I think. So that's a shame. I was hoping that that battle was going to turn into a three-way. But now that Josef Müller has passed Bogle, now the pressure has been turned on its head. But there's a Ferrari in the background here, so Laboa has been working away in the background, pulling in as they've been battling for second and third. Laboa in fourth has been working away and has closed the gap. So you can see that Laboa now fancies a go at third place. Is perhaps Bogle is feeling like he can't push. Is that what he's doing in this race? Maybe this Lotus feels a bit too fragile. Laboa does lock up a little. He does run a little bit wide in turn 1, but he's able to gather it up. It doesn't hit any of the curbs on the outside. So maybe Bogle is feeling that the Lotus is not going to last the race. 13 laps gone out of 45. So with going up to the, I would maybe consider, it kind of looks like a hairpin, but it's not. It feels like a hairpin when you're actually driving it, but Clubhouse Bend, come down the hill. That's a spinner ahead. That is all that hard work by Müller, and he swapped ends in the S's. He has got going again with 5th just on his tail, so Schremser might fancy a go. That is a shame, because he did all that hard work to grab second place, but it just looked like the rear breakaway in the first part of the S's couldn't quite gather it up. I don't think he actually hit anything solid, so hopefully there's no damage. So the battle for second and third has now changed, but this battle between Rosa and Borveg is now taking that opportunity to get away. Or rather, it's not Borveg that's got away. It's Becker that's got away. And Borveg has decided to breeze up to the back. He's taking a big look up the inside. I thought that was a bit of a chance there. Couldn't quite get it slowed down. That was unfortunate, but he aimed to the apex. I think possibly with these cars, you've got to give them a bit more leeway with braking. And if you know that you're going to be a bit too long on braking, you want to aim to a place where a car is not. So it looked like he tried to do that, but no harm done. So Joe Reebok has been able to get going again right in front of Reebok. Slightly lock up the tyres coming out of, or coming into Clubhouse Bend. So Schremser getting it all sideways coming out of the last turn. So let's see the pace of Schremser. Schremser was in the low 117s. We know that Josef Müller is able to get down to the mid 116s. But the progress of this BRM that started at the back of the grid today, Salvalaggio, is now up to 8th place, and the Brabham Schuerkamp is the next on his hit list. So fabulous battle between, I can see on the track map there's a big space between first and second. Second and third are kind of locked together. Then you have 4th and 5th. The 6th of Becker is now on his own, but you have 7th of Schuerkamp. Then you have 8, 9, 10 and 11. So a big train of cars. And this is one of them. So at the head of the queue is Schuerkamp in 7th. With Salvalaggio. Slight lock up from that Brabham ahead. We've got the small battle here. This McLaren trying to chase Rosa. So 30 laps remaining. Wanted to actually see who was our biggest winners and losers out of this current first 15 laps. So looking down on the list, our biggest winner making up places is Schuerkamp in 7th. He's made up 4 places from the start. But unfortunately the biggest loser out of the places so far is Joe Reebok. He's now in 10th, down 7 places. So it's unfortunate for Joe Reebok, and he does possibly put a move on in the background there, as we see Salvalaggio puts a move on Schuerkamp. So Salvalaggio now up to 7th place. He does have about 4 seconds on Becker out in front, but does Schuerkamp fancy a go sticking in that slipstream? Slipstream can be quite powerful around here, particularly coming out of that final corner if you're under the exhaust pipe of the car in front. So Schuerkamp not quite close enough. Have a dive up inside into Clubhouse Bend. A good battle between these two. What would have possibly been Jackie Stewart and Jack Brabham back in '67. So coming up to the final bend. Pretty similar lines coming out the final corner. So all these cars have got very similar power output. The handling characteristics can be slightly different. So, as I said, under the rear exhaust pipes you get a very good run, but Salvalaggio ducked to the inside thinking, right, you're going to have to go all the way around the outside. So Schuerkamp tries and does. That's very well held. Very good awareness as well to be able to see that you were clear when you headed into turn 1. So that was very well judged by Schuerkamp. But Salvalaggio can now stick under the rear exhaust pipe. Fancies to go up into Sunset Bend, but not quite close enough. So fastest lap time of Schuerkamp was 1:17.5. That was actually his fastest lap last time. That little bit of toe probably helped with that. So Joe Reebok trying to make up for those lost positions. So you see, big train of cars. Salvalaggio has now got away from Rosa. Where has Schuerkamp gone? Schuerkamp has dropped down a bit. So Joe Reebok now has a Ferrari in for company. It's got the fight to Schuerkamp ahead, so maybe a half spin for Schuerkamp has dropped him back into the clutches of Joe Reebok. And then we have Borveg just behind. So the leader out front, Calderon. We haven't seen a lot of Calderon. Once he took the lead, he was away. So 10.3 seconds. Now Laboa has decided that he needs a Ferrari 1-2 in South Africa. So Laboa is now in second. And Bogle in the Lotus is dropping about 2 seconds behind. But since Josef Müller had that little bit of a spin through the S's, still company in fourth. That's Joe Reebok gone round again. So that's unfortunate. It drops him back down to 11th place. So that releases the pressure on Rosa, Schuerkamp, and I believe that's Borveg in the background there. So 19 laps gone out of 45. So it is Ferrari, Lotus, Cooper and Matra. That is your top 5. So our leader is coming to lap our 12th place of Andy D. So as I say, top 12 places will be scoring points today. But unfortunately 13th place of Grimlowski is still currently in the pits. It doesn't say he has retired. So possibly real world getting in the way of his virtual world racing. So Schuerkamp cutting it very close to the edge. And that Armco, we did see a couple of people hitting that Armco barrier in qualification. It can knock the steering out of whack, so you can get some suspension misalignment, which makes these cars very difficult to drive, or more so than they are. As Schuerkamp goes around, he is parked. Unfortunately, Borveg was coming around that corner, kind of unsighted, couldn't quite. He was already braking to get round that corner. That was a bit unfortunate. Car possibly doesn't look damaged. So Schuerkamp was just parked across the wrong part of the circuit there. Is this a problem for Rosa? That looked like a very slow exit. Letting Joe Reebok through. It's so I do finally see on the list Grumlowski has marked himself as a DNF. So every driver on the circuit right now will be scoring points. I believe they do have to get past a certain race distance, but I'll have to confirm that. So 20 points all the way down to 1. So currently Calderon is doing what he needs to do out front, with Leboa in second, Bogle in the Lotus in third, with Muller. Looks like it's a little bit of stalemate. Not seem to be closing on third place of Bogle, but possibly ruining that spin that took him from second all the way down to fourth. So again, this might be temperature related as well. Possibly our drivers are monitoring the temperatures of their cars, and you possibly want to, if you see those temps rising into the red, you possibly want to take a couple of laps just to ease off a little. So Schuerkamp after his spin, Borveg just ahead that couldn't avoid. Hopefully they aren't, their cars aren't damaged, because this is going to be a very long race. Otherwise we've just about ticked over to half distance. So 22 laps of 45, which will be 23, which will near enough be half distance. So Schuerkamp currently in 11th place in the Brabham. Slight bit of oversteer on exit there. I don't know if he's close enough. A little bit of draft. He seems to be closing in though. That's a hell of a bit of slipstream. I didn't think he was actually close enough. So I wonder whether perhaps Borveg ahead is running out of gears. It did seem that he was like 0.7 away coming out of the final kink, and gained all the way up into turn 1. So maybe hitting the rev limiter, maybe not adjusting gears, but I don't know. Maybe again trying to be careful with temperatures, because that's flat out. We did see the Lotus doing up to about 290 down into turn 1. So Borveg and Schuerkamp, closest battle on track at the moment. The rest of our drivers have spread out quite significantly. Again, we can see big black lines left by Borveg. Only when you see someone locking up in front, you kind of think that's sense kind of blood in the water, putting the other guy under pressure. So again, 0.8 away. You can see that time coming down on the overlay there. So he's able to close about maybe 1/10, 2/10 of a second. Big lock up for Borveg coming into the apex. He runs all the way to the outside. I didn't think he was going to save it there. But so Kyalami South African Grand Prix. As we see the look up from the Ferrari ahead. The 67 layout used in 61 all the way into 1988. I'd imagine that once they got to the 80s, then there would be some adjustment for safety purposes. You can see some gravel traps. We haven't actually seen Andy D at all this race. Andy D back in 12th place. I think about to be lapped by Josef Müller there. And we cut to the leader. We haven't seen the leader either. Once he overtook Bogle for the lead, we've not seen him. That was brief, but we know he's there. So Calderon in the Ferrari out front as we step back to the cameraman's favourite, apparently, of Schuerkamp, and then we go to Schremser in 5th. So you can see Schremser doesn't have any. You can hear someone out in front there, but no one out behind. That's a very loose Brabham, so maybe overheating the rears a little. So be careful of those temperatures. So Salvalaggio storming up from the back of the grid. There's a yellow flag in Sector 1. I think that might be 11th place of Schuerkamp again. So from the back of the grid, didn't put in a qualifying time. Entered quite late, only had the warm-up session to kind of get his eye in. Pushing on in 7th place. Our only BRM runner is pushing into the 1:17.1 was his last lap around. Nearly a fastest lap for him. So ahead of him is Ralph Becker in the Lotus, who had a bit of a slower lap last time around, a 1:19.4. So that's why these two are close together. But they are a very similar pace into the 1:17s. But that 1:15.8 for our leader, 1:15.863 is the fastest lap of the race for Carlos Calderon. That was him trying to build a gap at the start of the race, and he's now slipped back into the 1:17s. So fuel burning off, I don't think tyre wear really becomes an issue, but once the fuel burns off, the cars get a bit lighter. They handle a little bit differently. So I was very impressed by all of our drivers in the first number of laps that they were able to keep their noses clean. The cars would have been very, very heavy. So the BRM of Salvalaggio chasing down Ralph Becker in the Lotus. So 26 laps gone. Calderon leads, Laboa second, Bogle third, Müller in 4th, Schremser in 5th, Becker 6th, Salvalaggio that we're looking at in 7th, Reebok now up to 8th, Rosa in 9th, Bolveg 10th, Schuerkamp in 11th, and Andy D in 12th. So this might be a learning experience as well for some of these drivers. They may have not done a 45 lap distance in these particular cars. And when we were running the Formula 1 1984, that was a long old race as well. But you can see how much that Salvalaggio is pushing by the locking those tyres now within about a second. So he's able to keep a bit more of a tighter line. So this BRM is handling well. That Lotus ahead of Ralph Becker is a little bit of a handful. So if you ever get the chance to see a BRM of 1967 in person, please do so. So Becker is deciding to try and break the toe. Pulls right to the inside. He knows that he's possibly a bit vulnerable, so that BRM closed by about half a second. So as I say, I think it's in its what's called 816. I believe is it a P83? I think that's the version we're talking about. So the BRM driven by, if I can just look down my list. So we've got the BRM Reg Parnell Racing, but this isn't the team. Owen Racing is the team that is driven by Jackie Stewart and Mike Spence rather. Not Mike Pence, Mike Spence. back in the 60s, the P75 3 litre H16. So slight mistake from the Lotus ahead. Now drawing this BRM right up to the exhaust pipe. So is it going to be passed before turn 1? So pulls directly to the inside here. Got to be careful, you don't really want to be weaving on the straight in these cars. Obviously with the added slipstream, you've got to be careful with the stopping distance as well. So we saw that the Lotus of Bogle was going 290. So I'd be interested to know what the speed of that BRM directly in the draft. It's better under braking than the Lotus in front. So down third gear. Is he going to go down to second? Again, a lock up for Becker ahead. So third gear through the S's. And then up to the final bend. So, Josef Müller, we break away from that battle between Salvalaggio and Becker, 6th and 7th. And we're back to Josef Müller, who has been able to catch Bogle. So, a number of 116. So he's in the mid 116, so he's been able to catch Bogle. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that battle. I'm sure our cameraman is going to be hard pressed to think of what battle to look at, because they're both within a second. Unfortunately, I don't have the technology to go split screen. But Josef Müller, I'm going to keep an eye in the on the timing tower as Salvalaggio goes a little bit wide. As we cut back to that battle now. So the Cooper of Josef Müller, after that little bit of a spin, knocked him down to 4th, but I'm sure he would like to get a podium out of this. So 2/3 of the race now completed, 30 laps of 45, as Bogle in 3rd and Josef Müller in 4th come across the line. Let's see how much he gains in the slipstream. So 0.3 of a second, nearly 0.2 of a second, so not quite close enough to have a go up to turn 1, but possibly putting Bogle under a bit of pressure, which obviously means that he may put that Lotus under a bit of stress. So Becker is doing the weaving again to keep this BRM behind, but I'm sure it won't be long. Trying to cut that toe, because the toe does go in about 0.4 of a second, it seems. So Josef Müller piling on the pressure. And coming back to Becker and Salvalaggio. There is a lap car in front. Is this going to play a part? So Andy D has got to be watching his mirrors. I nearly died then. So I don't know who it looked like maybe Becker was taking a bit of a tighter line there, and that BRM of Salvalaggio had to take. He didn't really take avoiding action, but he's fitted into a gap which was about the size of his car. So Josef Müller does get by into turn 1, just needs to get it stopped and on the apex. I'm sure there's a Lotus somewhere. The Lotus is right there. So what does Bogle have left? Slight twitch from both of them coming out of turn 1 as they head through turn 2. So can Josef Müller now pull away? They are similar in lap times. Now just to rub it in a little, Calderon in the lead in the Ferrari has just put the fastest lap of the race in, a 1:15.86. So now that the fuel is coming down, he's able to push a bit more. But he is safe by about 15 seconds or so. So does he really need to push? There's only about under 15 laps to go. Right, Josef Müller now sets his sights on that Ferrari ahead. That is quite a big gap to catch. That's 5 seconds. We're dropping back to the battle between Becker and Salvalaggio. Still continuing to fight for just 6th and 7th. It's still points. So they were able to get by Andy D in the Eagle behind. So Bogle really hanging it out. Nearly full opposite lock. Runs a little bit wide. It's got to be very careful. So heading to the inside again. I think BRM of Salvalaggio has a better run this time. He's going to go all the way around the outside. Can he get it stopped though? Does he feel confident to get it stopped around the outside? You can hang it around the outside. There's not a lot of grip, as you can see. And he runs onto the curb and the concrete. There's no grip out there. Josef Müller, no, it's in the S's again. So another mistake from Müller. That seems to be his bogey corner. Once the tyres start breaking away, couldn't do anything to save it. Salvalaggio is desperate to get past this Lotus. He's probably sick of the sight of it at the moment. Just need to save it all up until the final turn. That is the leader. There's a yellow flag for the leader. That is the leader. That is a DNF for the leader. Was that a technical problem? I did saw him stationary at turn 2. I did say he was pushing on a bit. Was that over exuberance? Was that an engine failure of the Ferrari? But meanwhile, the BRM is able to get to the inside this time and is able to overtake the Lotus of Becker. So Salvalaggio, does he have the effort to be able to pull away? So that what looked like a surefire lead with under 15 laps to go. Calderon is now, unfortunately, possibly not going to score. I can't remember what the classification is. So after that little half spin, Josef Müller's got to do it all again. Bogle is wondering, he can't get rid of this Cooper. So again, deja vu. Didn't this happen a couple of laps ago? So Josef Müller now overtakes Bogle once again. Does get it slowed down. I'm going to look at my cheat sheet for my championship table because I want to make sure that I've got everyone in the right order. So, Becker tried to overtake where there was no space there, and it fed him straight into the Armco, so he's not going down without a fight. So Salvalaggio went defensive quite early coming out the final corner. So this slipstream, if the car behind can keep there, then you are very vulnerable, as we can see from Josef Müller. So, can this Lotus engine last for Bogle just behind this Cooper? Same goes for Becker. Can that Lotus engine last? And I'll have to get word whether it was possibly a technical problem for Calderon. We did see him pushing on. So, Becker is absolutely desperate. You can see locking of tyres. Probably gritting of teeth as well. But Josef Müller is now pulling away from Bogle in third. Maybe Bogle wants to settle for a podium here, but Salvalaggio is going to have to think about what he's going to do. He's fading to the inside here. Becker's got to go round all the way around the outside. I can hear a BRM to our right. He's been able to do it, so turnabout is fair play, as they say. So good battle between These two drivers, so Becker and Salvalaggio, are well matched. But Josef Müller not able to get away from this Lotus in third, so Bogle does have something for this Cooper. So the main straight seems to be the passing place. Not passing as quickly as I would have thought, so I thought that he would have been breezing past there, but he's got the inside line. Can he get it stopped? He can, no dramas. So maybe these drivers are going to have to think about, well, where they want to position themselves for the last blast, the last lap. Becker goes to the inside again. Salvalaggio has the outside. Good battle between these two. So a copycat move from last time, but the positions are swapped. Salvalaggio is able to go around the outside, but he can't seem to hold it. Becker sweeps across in front. He's got to be very careful that he's clear there. It's very, very close. Maybe Salvalaggio doesn't feel as confident going around the outside, but as I say that, going around the outside of Sunset Bend, if he can keep the throttle on, he will be on the inside coming up to Clubhouse Bend. And Becker turned in. There was a car already there. Can't turn in if there's a car already there. You don't really want to don't really want to dive down the inside of the S's either. That would be a bad idea. So good battle between these two. Slight bit of contact, but no harm done. And battle between Josef Müller and Bogle isn't over either. 37 laps of 45. We're going to be switching between these two battles for the rest of the race, I think. So on board with Bogle, tries to get it slowed down. That Cooper slightly earlier on the brakes. So side by side again. BRM on the outside, Lotus on the outside. So I think Salvalaggio probably knows where he's weak, and this is a different pass in place. I haven't seen anyone pass here yet, but I think maybe after the two spins that Müller's had at the S's, he wants to play it safe. But as long as he can stay under the rear exhaust pipe up to turn 1, slight lock up for that BRM in front. Did he get it stopped? He did indeed. But that BRM needs to break the toe, otherwise he's vulnerable. So here we go again. Lotus versus Cooper. Josef Müller goes up the inside. You see the power of that Cooper. He does have a bit more horsepower. Coming up the main straight. I'm going to have a look at the top speeds of some of these drivers. Oh, slight bit of oversteer. But he's able to keep with it. Just stepped out coming outside of turn 1. So, Josef Müller, he can't get away from this Lotus. Good battle between these two. Looking on the timing sheet, Salvalaggio has been able to keep ahead. No, he hasn't. Becker is now back through into 5th place ahead of Salvalaggio as they go side by side through turn 2. So it was another move down the straight. Where do you want to position yourself for the last lap? That's the thing. Do you want to be in front or do you want to be behind? The finishing line is quite late. So if you do get a run, but I don't think, unless you're really close behind the driver in front, I don't know if you will be passed by the start-finish line. So you can see the Dunlop Bridge there. That's about where the finishing line is. So it's a calculated risk if you want to stay behind on the last lap. So fabulous battle between 2nd and 3rd and 5th and 6th. I did think that Joe Reebok was going to come into this battle here. So BRM versus Lotus again. Becker goes to the inside. I think Salvalaggio probably feels a bit vulnerable on the outside because he's not been able to get it stopped. Runs out of grip. He's not able to get over the top of this Lotus. Okay, doesn't fancy going side by side through turn 2. Nearly side by side through turn 3. Up the Sunset Bend. That was braking very, very late. I think he saw a gap, but not quite. So maybe Salvalaggio is thinking, maybe I can put off the car in front, make him make a mistake, because it just seems to be we're swapping places every single lap. So I failed to mention, in all the drama of Calderon being our second retirement, Laboa in the Ferrari has been leading this race. That's the Cooper of. I wonder what happened there. Did the Cooper of Josef Müller unfortunately spin up his tyres coming out of Clubhouse Bend, or rather Sunset Bend? Schremser is now through to a podium place. Salvalaggio and Becker continue to fight in this last 5 laps of the race. So the podium places have changed quite dramatically. Now that two-way battle, I did say that Joe Reebok may have a chance to come back at these guys here, but he's got to be very careful, because Salvalaggio would possibly be focused on the car in front, and Joe Reebok doesn't really want to put his car in a place where Salvalaggio won't see, because he'll be concentrating elsewhere. So it's a difficult place to be, being sandwiched between a car in front and a car behind. Oversteer on exit, that means he's going to be vulnerable to the McLaren behind. He's still got oversteer on exit, spinning up those tyres. So now heading to the inside, the McLaren heads under the exhaust pipe. He's going to be drafting all the way down this straight, so this gives the opportunity for Becker to get away. So Joe Reebok has had a tumultuous race so far. It's been up and down the order. At one point he was down in 10th or 11th place, and side by side with the BRM. He's going to be on the inside on the fastest corner of the circuit. He makes it stick. So what might have been for the BRM, and you can see that Eagle off Rosa is stalking in the background. So maybe he fancies picking off one of the wounded. So now we don't have a battle between 2nd and 3rd. We are now concentrating on this battle between 5th, 6th, 7th and possibly 8th. So a yellow flag for, I believe that is Rosa. So he was closing on this battle, but a half spin coming out of the S's. There seems to be a place where a few people have dropped it. He's able to get going again, but 9th place of Bulveg is not far behind. So Joe Reebok, that was looking like he wasn't going to be able to catch up, is now possibly going to get into a top 5 position. So maybe fancies going around the outside. That's very... If he had a bit more of an overlap, I'm sure he could have held it. But as before, when you've got 2 cars battling out front, it leaves the one behind, the BRM of Salvalaggio. I cursed him. Possibly lighting up those tyres, trying to get on the throttle as quick as possible, and ended up lighting up those rears. So Joe Reebok interlocking those tyres with the Lotus in front. Also got Andy D slow on the straight as well. We have an Eagle engine failure, so black smoke coming out of that that Eagle. I don't think that's going to be going any further, so that will be our 3rd retirement. So I think Becker is going to have to be very, very careful with this weaving. I know he's trying to break the toe, but he's going to have to be very, very careful that it doesn't step over the line of blocking. So Joe Reebok probably senses that Becker feels the need to try and break the toe. So the battle for 5th and 6th, this is over the top 5. As Joe Reebok unfortunately gets his braking all wrong. And around he goes, he did. That's a bit of a heavy thump to the outside wall there. But meanwhile, unfazed, Leboa now inherited the lead from technically his Ferrari teammate. I'm seeing 4th place of Muller is stopped. Is this another engine failure? Muller is somehow... I don't know how he got out onto that infield. That was very interesting. So possibly lighting up the tyres, trying to come out the final corner. And ended up over the bank. He was very lucky to actually get it going again. So Josef Muller, that was knocking on the door of a 2nd place, has now dropped down to 6th. So we'll be ruining these mistakes, unfortunately. So lap 44 of 45. The leader is just about going to come across the line. You can see him in the background there. He's going to start his last lap. I believe it's his last lap. But we are looking at 7th place. So that mini spin for the BRM has been pretty much pushing the entire race to come up from the back of the field. But I'd imagine that if Salvalaggio put in a representative quality time, Joe Reebok goes around again, and Josef Muller back into the top 5, thanking his lucky stars, really. So does Salvalaggio have anything from this McLaren in front? These guys will get an extra lap in, I believe. But that BRM stepping out. So Leboa coming up to the final turn. Been a pretty sedate race from the Ferrari driver. It's going to come out what is the 2nd to last turn. I believe that must be our only eagle behind. That's Rosa. He's going to come across the line. He's going to win the South African Grand Prix. So good effort. Good battles between Bogle and Muller early on. Don't know what happened with whether they had a little bit of a coming together. But 2nd place is going to come across the line. Quite a number of seconds adrift. 17 seconds adrift. So Schremsel will come across the line in 3rd. Just about to lap the Brabham of Schuerkamp there. Now after that accident from Salvalaggio, Ralph Becker now gets a free run in 4th. An unfortunate incident for Josef Muller, pushing down to 5th. It's going to be the closest battle up to the line, so 5th and 6th. And Reebok is nowhere to be found. Was there an incident on the final lap? I think we missed that. So Josef Muller, what might have been very close finish between 5th and 6th here. Salvalaggio in 6th. Borveg will come across the line in 7th. And I believe 8th has already crossed the line. So Reebok is a DNF. So I wonder what happened to Reebok there. So maybe problems in the last lap. He will be classified in 8th place. So possible problems right at the end for Reebok. He was going up and down the order quite significantly. As everyone heads to the pits, they're probably sweating buckets after that race. That was very, very interesting to watch. Very exciting to watch. I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed it indeed. So Andy Schremser coming round to finish his race in the pits. Right, let's head to the results screen and see what our provisional result is for the South African Grand Prix. So, I can hear engines in the background revving away. You don't need that engine anymore, so why not make the most of it? So, our session results. I'm going to mark this down on my spreadsheet so I can see who is who. So, Leboa now comes away with the win. God, maybe feel a bit lucky because the early leader, Carlos Calderon, unfortunately may have had a technical failure. We'll have to find out. I'll have to find out for next time what it was because it wasn't on camera. But early pole sitter Matthias Bogle seemed to be in the battles all the way through the race. Good battles between him and Josef Müller, but Bogle would be the victor out of that. So Team Lotus second on the grid. Andy Schremser comes away with a podium. Probably not expecting that. We did see a lot of Schremser in the race. He seemed to be a little bit adrift from some of the cars in front and behind, but coming away with third. I think just surviving this race is probably a good shout. But Ralph Becker, the major battles with Sal Villagio, he's able to come home in fourth. Josef Müller, what might have been, I think that would be summing up his race, what might have been up to second place, down to sixth, but was able to grab a place on the last, or the penultimate lap, up to fifth place. But that Cooper was very quick in a straight line. Now from the back of the grid, Marco Salvalaggio was able to drag that BRM all the way to sixth place, so that's good going for Marco. I've not actually got him on my list, so I'm going to have to mark him down on my spreadsheet so that I get his points correct. Where he is, there he is. I remember him from running the Renault in the 1984 season we ran last time, but now in the BRM. So sixth place for Salvalaggio. Borveg, we saw a bit of him going up and down the order. That Ferrari was always in the mix at certain points in this race, but seventh place he will come away with. I don't know if that was a failure on the last lap for Joe Reebok whilst we were looking at the leaders coming across the line. He was looking at a fifth place, I think, but possibly it was either technical failure or perhaps a spin, and he will finish classified in eighth. But again, this is provisional. So Thomas Rosa, again, we saw him in the early part of this race, but maybe faded a little bit towards the end, having a couple of spins. And we did see some battles with Schuerkamp as well. That Brabham proving to be quite mighty, but a couple of half spins but paid to being further up the field, but Schuerkamp finishing in the top 10. So that's a good result. So 20 points for the leader, Leboa, in this championship. And Bogle will get 16 points. Andy Schremser will be getting a important 14, so that's good points. I don't believe there are any bonus points for pole position or fastest lap. But looking at the timesheets, fastest lap would have possibly gone to Carlos Calderon with a 1:15.8. That was the fastest lap of the race. No one even got close to the 1:15s. I'm looking down the best lap times, so it was very, very close to what would have been. Well, qualifying times were actually 1 second faster than that, 1:14 by 0.8. That was Matthias Bogle. But very interesting run, very interesting race. But we'll have to see what happens next time out. And we'll go to the next page. So Schuerkamp, unfortunate. We saw Andy D parked at the side of the track. Black smoke coming out of that Westlake engine. Decided to call it a day, and we'll have to find out what happened to Calderon, whether that was engine failure. He just set the fastest lap of the race, but it could have been an errant downshift, and we didn't see a lot of Grimlowski. He dropped back in the early order, and the only Honda in the field but he will come away with 13th. We'll have to see whether he actually classifies for, well, 13th place doesn't, because the points going down to 12th. So our schedule looks like this. So that's the South African Grand Prix over and done with. Our next Grand Prix will be the 31st of August. So looking forward to that at Monte Carlo in Monaco. So the 67 version of Monte Carlo. I am looking forward to that race. So hopefully you can join us then. And then we will be heading to Zandvoort in the Netherlands. First race of September on the 14th of September. And Spa round 4 going to Belgium. It's the 67 long version of Spa. That is going to be very treacherous, especially in these cars. And then round 5, 12th of October, will be in France for Rouen. So, yes, very interesting race, very long, 45 laps, although it did seem to go by quite quickly. I was expecting, I mean, I've got a bit of a dry throat from all the action that happened, because the automatic camera just kept going back and forth between driver to driver. It didn't know who to focus on. There was just so much action happening. Very interesting race, and it will be a very tight Monaco Grand Prix. Don't expect a lot of passing, but the Monaco Grand Prix in 1967 is a little bit different. We've got a fast chicane where we hope no one's going to vault into the harbour. That's, I mean, I'm tempting fate there by mentioning that, but yeah, that'd be interesting. So SimRacers Revival. Obviously, if you want to join us, Google SimRacers Revival, join the Discord, be a part of this racing. Good bunch of guys and girls racing classic tracks on and classic cars. So it should be interesting. And this series goes all the way to December, the 21st of December, so plenty of time. So 9 rounds to go. 9 rounds of racing to go. So I've been your host, Neil Wood. It's been a pleasure to take you through this Grand Prix, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the next one. See you later.